And so what we want to remember is that we are connecting. We are connecting in ways that are powerful and positive and beautiful. And sometimes it helps. It really does help when we take a moment to just allow for that presence to be felt, to be experienced, and whatever we want to call it, however we want to refer to the Divine One, let us be aware that we are not doing this on our own, that there is a power within us that allows us to do more and to be more. What I wanted to really talk about today was the idea of togetherness, because a lot of what's happened over the last couple of months between Canada and the US has felt a bit divided. There's been a lot of division, especially in America, but here we're still feeling some of it as well. And so I wanted to make sure that we are looking at life from a different perspective instead of worrying about who's a liberal and who's a conservative and who's an NDP. Let's just remember that we all are on this path together, that we're journeying as one, and together we can accomplish a lot more than we can on our own. So connecting, learning from each other. We might have very different opinions, whether it's about religion, whether it's about our political views, whether it's about the type of work we do or the way we lead our lives. We may have some very different ideas about that. But wouldn't it be wonderful, positive, and productive if we were to come together and discuss those things together, to be able to learn, to listen to somebody who has a different viewpoint and be willing to hear them without trying to correct or change? And for someone to listen to our point of view, and again, just to hear it, to be grateful for the opportunity to learn from one another. So as we're moving through this journey of life and living, sometimes what we do and how we do it is a greater impact than most anything else. So we really want to pay attention to the way we're living life, the way we're showing up. There's a story I wanted to share today about the idea of generosity and stuff. And I think that's a really important part of this coming together. And the story starts, there was a farmer who grew excellent quality corn. And every year he won the award for the best corn. One year, a newspaper reporter interviewed him and learned something interesting about how he grew it. The reporter discovered that the farmer shared his seeds with his neighbors. The reporter asked, "How can you afford to share your best seed corn with your neighbors when they are entering in the competition with yours each year?" Should be competition, shouldn't there? The farmer said, "Why, sir, don't you know? The wind picks up the pollen from the ripening corn and swirls it from field to field. If my neighbors grow inferior corn, cross-pollination will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. If I am to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors grow good corn. Together, we are more." When we begin to work together, when we work in collaboration, when we come together with a sense of oneness and possibility, when we start to share rather than withhold, when we start to see the connections rather than the disconnections, when we look to see how we can improve the life of somebody else, we begin to see how our own life begins to improve as well. And I love that story because it really is about a generous spirit, but it's also somebody who knows the reward of that working together idea. And so what we want to do in our lives, and I think moving forward, because I try to not look at the news this week. I did take a little peek at it for a moment. And, I had this energy of different people, people phoning and saying they were a bit anxious, or people sitting back and going, I'm really happy with the result, or I don't like the result, or now what's going to happen to Canada. So all of these things are swirling around. And when we focus our attention on that which is discomfort, when we focus our attention on that which creates anxiety, what we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to expand the anxiety. We're allowing ourselves to expand this place of division rather than sitting back and going, okay, now what? Instead of watching the news 24/7, to sit back and maybe take a walk in nature, hug a tree or sit by the lake, play in the snow if you have snow where you are. Or here you can roll in the beautiful leaves, all the leaves that are on the ground. We want to sit back and really pay attention to how it is we're living and what it is we're doing, because together we are more. So even as we're in the grocery store, I was talking to somebody yesterday about how I talk to everybody on the street. If I'm out for a walk, I say, hi, good morning, the weather's great, or how are you enjoying this? And those conversations are interesting to me. They're fun to me. I had a neighbor once take me into his backyard to show me his very big, lush garden. And then he proceeded to give me potatoes and things out of the garden. And that happened because of a connection. And I think sometimes we'll sit back and go, well, I can't talk to strangers. I'm afraid of strangers. A stranger is just someone you haven't met yet. And when we look at the 8 billion people on the planet, the majority of those people are good. The majority of those people are going to offer you a kindness, or they're going to say hello. They're not going to harm you in any way. And so we want to really start looking at the ways we can come together. This week, I had the good fortune of an annual general meeting at PWA. So it was in person as well as online. So I went downtown to be there. And what was beautiful was just this huge room filled with people, probably about 100 people, and an AGM that moved in record time with applause throughout. People were so happy. And you look at that and you go, that is togetherness. And then we shared a meal that had been prepared by community members. The journey that we're on can be far more productive if we allow ourselves to move out of that fear zone, out of the victim zone, and instead live in a true sense of our oneness with the divine. When we acknowledge that there is a power and presence far greater than this human experience, we start to open up to the potential and the possibility that life holds for us. And when we do that, that's when we can be generous. That's when we can be joyful in our sharing. That's when we don't worry about the person on the street. We make eye contact. We share a smile. We tell someone how wonderful they look today. Whether we know them or not, it doesn't matter. A neighbor down the street from me, I was walking a couple of weeks ago, and she was outside with her wee baby, probably about 3 months old. And so we started chatting, and it was a wonderful conversation. She's new to Canada. She doesn't know anybody. I said, come visit. I'm just down the street. Come visit anytime. Bring your wee baby. We'll sit and have tea and chat. We have an opportunity to connect. And as we connect, even in the Bible, it said where two or more are gathered. And there's an energy that happens from that. There's a possibility that happens from that. We start to expand our sphere of influence. We start to see how the goodness that we have, the light that we share, grows and expands. And love is something that can never be diminished. The more we use it, the more it grows. So we want to open our minds and hearts to a new reality. When we begin to look at our lives with this new sense of making it good for everybody, a world that works for everyone requires us to begin to understand our interconnectivity and reliance on the universe and nature. We're a part of an abundant universe. And yet sometimes we focus on the lack and the limitation. Human nature turns to competition for a limited supply instead of considering working together as we create more. And when we look at the story of the farmer is saying, I share my excellent seed with everybody around me, and it benefits me. And so it is when we are generous of spirit, when we take the time to open a door for someone, say hello to a stranger on the street, offer a helping hand to someone who might need it. What happens is there's an expansion that happens within us where we open up to more and more good. So we want to pay attention to what we withhold and what it is we share. Because whatever withholding is actually holding us back. So we're not actually withholding from anyone else. We're actually withholding from ourselves. So we want to make sure that we start planning in a way that allows us to be fully present moment by moment, not just on occasion. Like, let's put our cell phones down for a minute. Let's close up the laptop and have a face-to-face conversation with somebody. I love it when I can be in person with people because I really want to connect in that way. This is beautiful, and I am so grateful for this. Because being able to connect this way, surprising how deep the connection can go, which then creates the yearning to actually be together, at least for me. So we want to pay attention, and we want to know that everything we're doing in the world is adding to the well-being, not just of us, but of everyone. So there's a way of being that allows us to be really, really grateful. And as we realize that we're part of this abundant universe, we're able to know that the good that we have is not limited, that the journey that we're on is expansive, and we can share that expansive understanding with others. The farmer recognized his good is not limited by sharing it with his neighbors. Healthy self-respect and self-interest do not conflict with a world that works for everyone in a healthy, beautiful, positive, productive way. With that awareness, we can make choices that support our good and know that our good supports the whole. And I've said this before, that as we think about life in a really loving, compassionate way, what happens is we are elevating the consciousness, not just ours, but the entire consciousness, because we're all one. We are interconnected. And so when we look at the universe as a whole, we realize that we live, move, and have our being in it. So the way I think, the way I act, the way I behave, not only is seen by the people around me, but actually impacts the consciousness of the whole. So everything we're doing is going into this consciousness, this universal subjective consciousness. And that's what's creating everything. So when we look at our lives and there's something we don't like, what's usually the first thing we do? We will call it bad or wrong, or we'll go, oh, I don't like that. Or maybe there's somebody living a different way around us and we don't like the way they're living. And so we become judgmental or critical about how they're doing things instead of stopping and pausing and realizing that whatever's happening in our lives, it may feel bad. Excuse my voice. I'm not sure where it's going today, but it's going somewhere. Take the time to breathe into the moment and to acknowledge that, yes, there's differences. Yes, there's things that may be uncomfortable. But I think in order for us to really move in our own elevation of consciousness is to sit in discomfort, to be willing to be uncomfortable so that we create space for someone else. And it is in that discomfort that often we find a pathway forward that is surprising because we didn't know. We didn't know something before we allowed ourselves to be present. So we want to make sure that we're operating in a way that is expansive, that is accepting. I often suggest to people to practice random acts of kindness. And it can be anything. Holding a door, holding the door of the elevator for someone, helping a woman with a stroller, baby in a stroller, get up onto the bus or the streetcar, the energy that we put into the care of ourselves and those around us makes a huge impact on the entire consciousness of this universe that we live in. So what are we bringing? Are we sharing our triumphs? Are we sharing our joy? Or are we pulling back for fear of judgment? Are we allowing ourselves to hold back the love that we have because we're afraid of being criticized or somebody to look at us and think we're weird or odd? I think weird and odd are probably good things, beautiful things. I'd like to be weird and odd. I am sometimes very weird and odd. But as we allow ourselves to begin to understand other people, we start to open up the potential, which then changes the consciousness of the whole, which is where we want to go. When I'm operating from a sense of lack or limitation, I'm holding back my good. When I have a sense that I'm not enough, I'm holding back my good. So it's important that we give up our judgment and criticism, that we begin to notice that as we are accepting of each person around us and each situation, ours and others, we start to realize how powerful we truly are and what it is we're capable of. And I think there is so much that we could learn from this. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes said, "The universe wills us to have everything. And as we express life, we fulfill Spirit's law of abundance. But we do this only as we realize that there is enough good to go around. Only as we know that all of these gifts are given as freely and fully as the air and the sunshine, alike to all." To all. We live in an abundant universe. We live in a place of infinite possibility and potential. There is no reason to hoard or withhold. And when we do that, we create a blockage within ourselves. But just know that that energy does impact the consciousness of the whole. When we are living open, also Ernest Holmes wrote, "There is one source of everything in the universe, which takes the form of the supply we need when we need it." And again, if we believe that we are in an abundant universe, then what happens is we have love and connection and friendships. We have the money we need. We have the homes that we require. We live in a way of a sense of freedom because our mind is not blocking or stopping by thinking limiting thoughts, but we're expansive. And that allows us to open up to more amazing, wonderful, beautiful things in life. Dennis Merritt Jones wrote, "As our individual abundance consciousness rises, it affirmatively affects the whole of humankind. When we are conscious of our oneness with an abundant universe and with each other, we are compelled to become change agents for good. This is when our generosity of spirit and our spirit of generosity merge and become a catalyst, guiding our actions, and making the world a better place." And I think sometimes we're really looking to create a better world, aren't we? People I talk to want a better world. Some of the people I talked to this week are a little afraid that might not happen. Well, where is our focus? Let us focus on what we truly desire. Let us focus on loving one another and caring for one another. Let us focus on possibility and opportunity rather than limitation and withholding. Let's allow ourselves to find light in the moments of darkness. Let's be that light. If we're in a space that feels dark and heavy, don't run away from it. Shine your light into it. Be that change agent. See yourself as who you truly are, this dynamic, beautiful, unique expression of the one. Allow that energy to be fully alive in you and watch what happens from there. There's Dr. Mark Hyman wrote, "The power of community to create health or anything else is far greater than any clinic, physician, or hospital. The power of community, the togetherness. So when we're talking about abundance, we're not just talking about money, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about health, we're talking about our careers and our families, we're talking about all of it. We're talking about life on planet Earth. Let's live it in community. Let's connect. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant." By the seeds you plant. So when we're in a space that feels dark and heavy and something is wrong, instead of moving into that depressive energy, let us shine some light into it. I did a thing with my mom years ago. She was, I showed up at her door unexpected one Saturday, and she was so excited to see me because I hadn't seen her in 2 years. She lived in Calgary. I live here in Toronto. So I knock on her door about 10 o'clock in the morning and go, "You got the coffee on?" And she was so excited, so happy to see me. And we sat down and she poured the coffee and she said, "So when did you get in?" Oops. I said, "Thursday." "What? You come to Calgary on Thursday and I don't see you till Saturday?" And she was all upset with me. Now I could have dove right into that energy, right? But instead, I sat back and said, "Oh, Mom, you won't believe what happened. 3 months ago, I went to Paris and it was incredible. We had croissant at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And we ate in this little restaurant out on the street, watching the traffic and the people go by. And we went to, all these different places, Montmartre, and it was just absolutely spectacular." I interrupted that negative with the light. Now, she went back there a couple of times, but I had more stories to share. And so instead of buying into the, "Why didn't you do it this way?" Well, it is what it is, right? I thought it would be fun to surprise my mom on a Saturday morning for coffee when I live in Toronto and she lived in Calgary. We sometimes get triggered by the things people say or the things they do. But instead, let's be a light. Let's model a behavior of being that allows us to not only win, but to create that winning energy for everyone around us. Let us collaborate instead of compete. There was some competition Friday night, I'll tell you. We had a lot of laughs, though. We had a lot of laughs. And I think, everybody was very happy for everybody who won, but "I only need one more. I only need one more. Can you do this one? Can you get this one? I need this word or that word." But the fun of it, the joy of it was really fully present as we came together, 20 some people sharing a few hours online, but doing it in a game setting, which was truly, truly beautiful. Catherine Ponder wrote, "I am open and receptive to my highest good in mind, body, and financial affairs here and now." Yes, you might want to write that down. I am open and receptive to my highest good in mind, body, and financial affairs here and now. That is an energy that reproduces quickly. That's the type of virus I'd like to see moving through the world to become the next pandemic. The next pandemic should be a love fest. I think that would be a beautiful thing, where we start to acknowledge that we are one, that we begin to recognize not only are we one with each other, we're one with the divine. There is no separation. So let us think about this week. Let us think about togetherness. Let us think about ways that we can come together with friends or family, or even somebody that maybe we've had a disconnect with. Maybe we take the time to send a note or make a phone call or drop in for a visit. Whatever works. Let's think about the ways that we can practice random acts of kindness. And let us focus every day on all that we have to be grateful for. There is so much good in our world. There is so much beauty all around us. And all we need to do is focus our attention on that pathway and watch what happens. The law of attraction at work, we are infinitely supplied with more and more of that good. And it'll come in surprising, beautiful, and remarkable ways. So it's time to celebrate. It's time to acknowledge. It's time to take time in prayer. Take the time to pause, not to, be seeking a God out there, but to acknowledge the presence and power right here that is not only in me, it is me. And because it is me, I'm powerful. And if I'm powerful, then why am I living less than that? So let's step into it with greatness. Let's step into it with excitement and delight. Let's let go of the fear and worry about limitation and lack, and instead stand in a place of going, whoa, I'm one with this infinite source, and all is mine, all is good. And when we start to see each other not as separate from, but an aspect of, when I look at you, what I see is me. When you look at me, what you see is you. When we start to acknowledge the consciousness of beauty and grace and wonder and awe within each one of us, and we start to see that divine energy begin to flow, we start to acknowledge and realize we're more than enough. We're not broken and flawed. We're in fact perfect, whole, and complete. Our behaviors might be a little questionable at times, but isn't that the human way? But when we remind ourselves that I'm one with Source, we can begin to change habits or patterns that may have held us back. We can heal our bodies. We can heal our relationships. We can heal our lives. Not by getting it from somebody else, but by acknowledging the Source right here, being me and being you. Let us anchor these ideas with treatment. So I take a moment to just pause. To acknowledge the energy, the dynamic power of life, the beautiful, remarkable oneness of humanity, the brilliance of our imagination, the infinite possibilities that lie within us as we come together and share from that wealth of understanding and knowledge in the collective. There is so much good. And so we open our minds and we allow ourselves to think thoughts that are loving and kind, compassionate and beautiful. And as we do that, we begin to cleanse the negativity. And when it arises, which it probably will, we just allow it to move. We lovingly release it. Let it go on its way. And we allow the planting of more and more good, whether through affirmation or prayer, but we allow that energy to grow. And as I live in this space of oneness with Source, I begin to see my life in a new way. I see my journey, the obstacles that didn't need to be there, but I put there for my own transformation. Obstacles that now are disappearing as I stand in my oneness with the divine. As I acknowledge and recognize this, as I feel the energy of this, I absolutely know that all is well. Regardless of what it looks like, I know all is well. So I'm filled with a deep sense of liberation. I'm free. I'm free of conflict. I'm free of disrespect. I'm free of pain and struggle and suffering. I'm free of limitation. And I live in the dynamic flow of the one. And I am delighted and excited, for I know that all good is right here. I accept that that is the truth. And for that, I'm deeply and profoundly grateful. And with this deep sense of gratitude, I release these ideas into the law of mind, knowing it is done. All is well, renewed, restored, re-envisioned. I let that be the truth. And together we say,